If you feel like God is not answering your prayers, especially if you're starting to feel resentful or bitter about it, this message is 100% for you. So I was just sitting there the other day minding my business as one does when God just gave me this vision out of nowhere. So in this vision, I'm standing in what looks like an orchard, but all of the trees are very, very young, maybe 1 or 2 years old. So typically that's around the time when they first start to produce fruit. So inside the orchard is me, and I see Jesus. And on the outskirts of the orchard are just tons of people. And all of these people start to pray. And as they're praying, the trees start to bud and bloom. And the fruit starts to grow and grow the more they pray. And it's kind of breathtaking. Like, I am sitting there just in awe of this process. Because to be honest, I never really thought of prayer as something that has to grow. I thought you pray and it happens, you pray and it happens, like it's supposed to be immediate, and if it's not, you're doing it wrong. Anybody else felt that way? But this vision was showing me that these prayers were producing fruit. It was growing these things. Okay, but here's the kicker. Before the fruit could grow and develop to the point that it was ripe, all of a sudden, all of these demons come out of nowhere and start cutting the fruit off the trees, tearing it down, and just ravaging the place. And I was shocked, and I just said, Lord, why would you allow these demons to come in here and do that? Why would you let them in this orchard? And he said, I didn't. My people did. And I was just like, well, okay, then get rid of them. And he said, I can't. They were invited. And if they're invited, that means they have a right to stay. Shoot! But the worst part of all was that these people in the vision that had been praying and producing this fruit all of a sudden became bitter towards Jesus and started hurling insults at him, saying things like, you told us that if we prayed it would work. You told us that this is what we're supposed to do, and you're not holding up your end of the bargain. They were just angry and bitter and resentful and hurt, and they were taking it out on Jesus. And he sat there in silence. He said nothing to defend himself because he understood their hurt. And that part made me cry because I thought of all of the times that I've done that to him, where I have blamed him. I have taken it out on him. I have been angry with him because he didn't deliver like I thought he should. When in reality, it was me inviting these demonic influences into the situation. And listen, I'm not just talking about sin, okay? Because sin is one way that we invite demonic influences into our lives. And that's why we're told not to sin. It's not just for the sake of being obedient. It's also for our good and for our protection. But it's not just about sinning, because you can live a sinless life and still have a demonic mindset. It's about what you're coming into agreement with. Pay attention to the things that you're saying. Are you speaking phrases like, this will never happen? I'm always gonna be broke. This always happens to me. I can never get ahead, or anything of the sort, because that is coming into agreement with those demonic influences, and that can steal your fruit. So if you want to learn to pray and see the fruit of it, you have to come into agreement with God rather than the enemy. And that's hard to do because the world around us, everything around us, bombards us with the idea that we have to speak to what we see. But God doesn't speak to what he sees with his physical eyes. He speaks to what has yet to be unearthed. He doesn't look at that tree that's never produced fruit before and say, well, if the past is any indicator, then this tree will never produce fruit. Instead, he looks at that tree and he says, a harvest is coming and I'm going to prepare a feast. So who are you going to agree with? Because if you want to see your prayers actually bear the fruit, that's what matters. But if you're new in your relationship with God, or even if you're kind of starting over and just waking up to deepening your relationship with Him, it can be difficult to know what you're even supposed to agree with. It can be difficult to know how He thinks and how He sees things and what His perspective is. But that's why I wrote this book, 7 Days to a Life of Limitless, How to Ditch the Rules of Religion and Discover Unrestricted Freedom. This book outlines everything I learned over a 3-year period of deepening my relationship with God and learning those perspective shifts and learning how God sees things. This taught me what to come into agreement with. Now, I do have a bunch of this information in my page and all of the videos that I've posted before, but if you want the info all in one place, you might want to check this out. And if you struggle to hear God's voice, I have a whole chapter in that book about hearing God's voice, but I also wrote a journal that kind of complements it. This is Go Ask God the Journal. It's 120 question prompts where you ask God the questions, journal the answers down below, and it helps you practice hearing God's voice. So if you think that either of these things would be beneficial in deepening your walk with God, I'd encourage you to check them out. You can find them on TikTok Shop, on Amazon, or at yourfriendcaitlin.com.